There are 3 ways that the way you see yourself can negatively impact your experience in life. Now let's break it down so that you can understand how to flip this, so that in case you're experiencing any of these symptoms, your self-concept, your identity can begin to serve you instead of hurt you. Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Lorena, I'm a somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I support you in bridging the gap between how you currently see and perceive yourself and who you desire to be or become, so that you can break patterns that continually repeat in your life, you can release outdated identities and belief systems, and you can finally step into a version of yourself and a reality that you are wanting to and meant to experience. Today, we will start by covering what your self-concept is, and then go into exactly how that self-concept shapes and creates your life and your reality. And then I'll tell you 3 ways that your self-concept can manifest negatively. And I'm telling you these 3 ways so that in case you're experiencing any of these, you can change it, because at the end, we are going to use changing your self-concept to your advantage so that it begins to catapult you towards the things, the feelings, the people, the experiences that you want. Now, we're going to do a very brief overview of what your self-concept is. And that's just in case you've either not heard of this before, or if you've not heard my perspective and lens on this before. But your self-concept is basically the way you see and perceive yourself. It's how you walk through the world and what you see as possible for you. It's essentially who you think you are and the identity that you live from. And we all have one, we all have an ego, we all have a self-concept, a concept that we associate with, that we see ourselves as and from. Now, that self-concept, that identity can be very expansive. It can bring you further in life. Usually the people that you see that easily get what they want, that are very successful, no matter where they started, what their baseline was and where they came from, they have a good perception of themselves. They see themselves as capable, as successful, as loved. But your self-concept can also be limiting. It can keep you in repetitive cycles and perceived limitations in environments and experiences that you would rather not have. And that identity, that concept that you have of yourself has a direct impact on your life and reality. And that is both your inner reality and your outer reality. You can, of course, choose to see yourself as a victim of your circumstances. That's okay to do. A while back, I created a video about if you experience rejection again and again in your life, how you created that in parts, and it got very mixed responses, as to be expected, because sometimes we just want to keep ourselves in everything is happening to me. And that's okay. But it also keeps you unable to change anything in your life. It keeps you disempowered, because then there's nothing you can do to ever change it. What you can do instead is begin to take responsibility for it. And that doesn't mean that nothing bad can ever happen to you. That doesn't mean that no one can ever treat you badly, or that you can never fail, or that those types of experiences are your fault. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you by any means. But it is about recognizing the role that you play in your experiences, in your circumstances, and really taking ownership of what you have power over. And there are 3 ways that your self-concept manifests externally. And these 3 ways apply to everyone. And these ways can outpicture in a positive way, in a neutral way, but also they can impact you very negatively if you are not conscious of what your self-concept is, what state you're living from, and what is actually happening. So I'll outline them for you, and I really encourage you to listen to this or watch this and to ask yourself, which of these 3 experiences do I have, maybe even regularly? Because once you know that, you can actually do something about it. It's not a life sentence. It just means your self-concept needs a little shift, and it can, and it will, if you're committed enough to do something about it. So let's dive into these 3 ways. We're going to start with your physical body. Now, when you have a self-concept that is limited, that is you feeling negative about yourself, you feeling unworthy, not capable, it can put stress on your body and your nervous system, especially when we're talking about you having unresolved trauma. Maybe you did have a lot of things happen to you in the past that impacted your self-concept negatively, right? If someone continually betrays you or abandons you or bullies you, then you're not going to feel good about yourself. It's likely going to impact you. Natural reaction. But when you hold on to that identity, and when you repress these emotions associated with that experience, that trauma, it will put stress on your body and your nervous system because you're essentially then in a chronic trauma response, and that can show up as exhaustion, depression, constant low mood, constant fight or flight, or fawn or freeze. I have a whole nervous system series that I'm going to link in the description below as well. But it can also manifest as frequent colds or even chronic pain. I hear this a lot with people who have back pain all the time. If you have back pain all the time, it's because you're carrying a lot. There's other elements too, right? It's probably also you sitting at your desk all day or not moving enough or what your posture is, whatever. But there's also a somatic and emotional element to it. I even have a few clients who struggled with chronic illness for years. A few of them, for example, had long-term skin issues when they joined Recreate Yourself. And although we never actively worked on healing any of that, and that was not the purpose of the program is all about self-concept work and shifting your identity, recreating yourself, right? I even make a point in making sure that you understand that none of this is medical advice by any means. I don't believe I can heal any of that. And there's no guarantee that you doing this emotional work and this work on your self-concept will heal whatever ailment you have. I'm not a doctor, right? But I just cannot ignore at the same time that these women ended up healing their chronic illnesses, which is wild to me. And that's through the work we did on their self-concept. It wasn't the intention, but it was a side effect, a very good one. Now, why did this happen? How did this happen? It happens because the parts of you, your emotions, your beliefs that you bypass or not deal with or suppress, be that consciously or unconsciously, they will have a direct impact on you. And sometimes that means that your body starts attacking itself because of how much stress and tension and trauma you carry inside. So sometimes when you begin working on that properly, you properly address and integrate it in an appropriate way with a skilled professional, often the stress that you have put on your nervous system or that has accumulated in your nervous system and in your body for years or decades often, it resolves and your body can heal itself. As you might be able to tell, I take a very somatic and holistic approach to changing your self-concept, to working on becoming the version of yourself that you want to be. And if you want to learn more about this and also have a starting point, I have a free self-concept mastery blueprint and a daily checklist so that you can have a better overview of the framework that I use and also some tangible tools to begin working on shifting some things in your psyche, your identity, and your being. Let's move on to the second way your self-concept can manifest, often negatively, but we can also use this in a good way. Your emotional state and your reactions. Now, same as with the body, when there's parts of you that you reject, that you hide, that you don't deal with, when you have a self-concept that is built on low self-worth, lack of confidence, lack of fulfillment, it can create suppression, it can create emotional volatility. Now that's when you can become impulsive, emotionally volatile, and overly reactive. So now instead of you controlling your state of being, your state of being is controlling you. This can manifest as you reacting excessively, maybe even uncontrollably, every time or occasionally when a circumstance happens that you don't want. It can also manifest in attachment patterns, and often the two are connected. This could look like chasing another person or even chasing a desire, but often it manifests the strongest in another person romantically, and then trying to get them to love you. But it can also manifest as you avoiding relationships altogether. It can manifest as you never setting boundaries and then exploding at some point when someone mistreats you. You can then internalize it and turn it into self-loathing, thereby diminishing your self-concept even further, or you actually explode at the person or at someone completely unrelated, harming your relationships or the situation you're finding yourself in. Because of course, how you react emotionally and actually physically, tangibly, it has an impact on how you're perceived and what you get to experience. And that brings me to number 3, your external reality. That's the one people usually think about. And you can see that the first two are very much connected to this, right? But your external reality might be the one that's the most obvious to you. You might not know how your self-concept connects to your health or your body. You might not know how your self-concept connects to the way you react, the way you feel, especially most of the time, or connected to certain circumstances or people. But your external reality, you know what that looks like. So depending on what your self-concept, what your identity is, you may experience certain repetitive patterns. You may find yourself in undesirable circumstances, or you may get stuck in unwanted relationship dynamics. And you may feel that no matter what you do, nothing changes externally. Very frustrating. And then you feel lost as to why this is happening or what you can actually do to change it. Now, of course, we want to talk about how to resolve this. Before we do this, just let me know if any of these 3 ways resonate with you, if they show up in your life, and if so, which one you resonate with the most. Drop it in the comments. Is it your body, your emotions, your external reality, or all 3? And if that's the case, it is for most of us in some way, and it just means there's work to do. But don't worry, we can shift this. So let's talk about it. How do you resolve this? Now, most women notice these symptoms, right? You will have recognized yourself in one of them at least. But it's important to remember these are symptoms. Emotional reactivity, physical illness, provided it's not genetic or environmental, but instead triggered by your emotions and your nervous system. And also unwanted circumstances, that's all a symptom, that is not the cause. And what a lot of women will do then, instead of doing the necessary work to resolve the core issue, which is their self-concept, their identity, they try to make themselves do things differently. They try to force themselves to react differently. Well, now you're symptom managing, and that might actually work for some time, but your emotional response is still the same. So occasionally, you can't contain it anymore. You can't control yourself anymore, and you will still react. And then you probably feel bad about yourself for reacting, although you only did what's natural for your state. If you're struggling to control your emotional reactions, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not a failure. It's not because you're not disciplined enough. It's not because everyone can do it except you. Depending on the state you're in, and depending on the emotions that are suppressed or repressed inside of you, whether you're aware of it or not, it's not possible for you to not react long term. And to an extent, it's not possible for anyone to not react depending on the circumstance, but a lot of this is connected to your state of being. You may also try to manage the symptom connected to your physical body, because that's probably the most hidden one, because we don't always know whether this is due to your emotional state and your nervous system state, unresolved trauma, whether this is due to your self-concept, or whether it's an actual just genetic issue or something due to your environment, right? And depending on the disease, it might not even be curable. So this one is really tricky to uncover. Where is it a symptom of your self-concept and where is it something else? But honestly, the best way to resolve this is to do the work on your self-concept anyway, because then maybe, like you saw with my client success stories where they healed chronic illnesses, maybe it will resolve. And if it doesn't, then at least you know that there's something different you need, and you can do them in tandem, of course. You don't need to pick one or the other. But if you keep your nervous system dysregulated, if you keep yourself in a state and in a self-concept that is attached to that illness, for example, or to the cause of that illness, in case it is trauma, in case it is emotional repression, you're actually just keeping yourself in a loop of managing your symptoms. So whilst there's nothing wrong with that per se, you also want to do the emotional and nervous system work along with that. And then, of course, when it comes to the external reality, you may try to manipulate it. force things to happen differently, try to control other people, get frustrated when what you're doing is not working. Managing the symptoms, the body, the physical reality, the emotional reactivity, it almost always backfires because it's not sustainable. It's exhausting, and often it doesn't even work. So what do? You prioritize shifting your identity first and foremost by making sure that your nervous system is stable. That is your state of being. By working through the trauma and the emotional charges that you may have consciously or unconsciously suppressed or repressed. By no longer suppressing the beliefs that you have in your subconscious, but instead allowing yourself to process and integrate and shift them appropriately. You want to do the work that shifts your self-concept at the core and not just on a surface level, because your physical body, your emotional landscape, and your external reality don't need to suffer in that way when your self-concept is aligned with what you do want. Then you don't need to try to make yourself do anything. It will fall into place. Your body will thank you, your emotional state will be balanced, and your reality will gift you opportunities that you couldn't even imagine. That is the magic of changing your self-concept. One of my most favorite successes that my clients tend to report is that the behaviors, the actions, the habits they have, the things they do, the things they want to believe and feel become natural when their self-concept has shifted. And that's because you resolve it at the root. So take this away from this video. You don't want to symptom manage with any of these three areas. You really want to go to the root to shift it where it started. Next week, we're going to dive into why you keep attracting emotionally unavailable men. I know that is something that a lot of women experience. And of course, I'm also going to tell you how to stop. So I wish you a beautiful week, and I'll see you in the next video.